Okay, welcome. So today I am going to be offering a reflection about a day in the life of boarding school. What exactly was the routine that myself and many others have as a routine? And then at the end I'm just going to offer a reflection of some of the downsides of having this really structured routine, and some of the conditions and the conditionings that we carry on into our lives as boarding school survivors, boarding school syndrome, that are issues we then have to work through. So enjoy. So I printed up a page from my new book, which is called Healing from Boarding School Syndrome. I'll be honest, I finished it probably July, and I realise I've still got quite a lot of editing to do, so it's going to be another few months at least before I even get it to an editor, let alone get it out onto the market. So I was hoping to get it published this year, but we'll see. I'm not so worried about that. So what is the routine? So I'll just go through a typical routine for myself. Certainly the first few years at boarding school. So 7 o'clock was wake up time. So you get up at 7 o'clock and a master comes round. So we were in an open dormitory. We had cubicles, but they would come in and wake us up. 7:30 we would, so obviously we'd get up, get dressed, and then it was about a 5-minute walk to the dining hall. So we would then have breakfast, and that was a formal that everyone would meet at the same time, began at the same time, and it finished at the same time. So it was kind of, we had a gavel that began the breakfast and grace, and then it was finished by grace. 8 o'clock you came back to the boarding house, and then we had cubicle inspection and shoe inspection. That was certainly 4, 5, 6 days a week. I don't think we had that on the Sunday. 8:30 we would have chapel practice. So the chapel was quite close to the dining hall, so it was a couple of minutes walk away. And that was maybe not every morning. Some mornings it might be prep, so that meant study time. 10 past 9 was usually lessons, and then lessons would go on till 11 o'clock, and where we'd have a break. You imagine we had a big school, so you'd walk in between the different blocks, so it could take you 5 or 10 minutes to get to class. So you'd say come back for a break, but you'd only be there for 10 or 15 minutes, get some new books, and then you'd head off again. Then from 11:30 till 12:45 roughly we had more lessons, and after that at 12:45 generally the younger years you'd come back to the house, but there was the option to go and do things like music. So we had a marching band. So from the age of 13 for me, I went and I studied to become a drum major. So you'd lead out this 100-piece marching band. So I did that, 12:45. Then 1:20, we would all line up outside the house, and you would march then into lunch, having the band play. We would then eat, and after lunch, it would basically be starting to get ready for the activity, and most of the time it was sport. I think it was on a Friday. You certainly, as I got older, we had community service or the military, and there were some days where you would get an option of what you wanted to do on an afternoon. So it might be squash or something like that, whereas the other days it was a specific activity like rugby or football that you had to do. Even if you didn't like the sport, you still had to go and do it. Then So in summertime, we would have the sport would be after we had lessons. In the winter and the spring, we would have the lessons would be first because of light. No, lessons would be after. So you'd do, the activity, the sport would be after lunch. That would go on till 4:30. Then 4:30 till 6, you'd have more lessons. Or like I say, in the summer, it would be say 2:30 till 4 would be lessons. Or I think it's probably 2 till 3:30. Okay, then we had tea in the dining hall at 6. 6:30 we had a break, and that was kind of our only real break of the day, where you might go and see friends or watch a bit of TV, or play games on the back asphalt where you play football and things like that. And then 7 o'clock we had a roll call to check everyone was there, and then we had prep in the dormitory on our cubicles, and we did that for about an hour and a half. And then again we'd have a little bit of break time. Basically we're getting ready for bed. So you change into your pyjamas, and we'd probably go down to see matron, who would offer, we'd have to do an inspection to check we were clean, especially the first couple of years. And then 9 till 9:30 was bedtime. So essentially from 7 o'clock in the morning through till 9:30, there was very little time for you to do your own thing. It was, you were doing what was needed. You had some options there, but that is a day in the life of boarding school. You have a really busy day. And so this was the 80s, the 90s when I was at boarding school. I doubt that it's changed that much. I think activities are really seen as a positive thing in boarding school. And I think on one level, I think although I do many videos about boarding school syndrome, I think that there are some positives. So the positives are, doing all these different activities, trying new things out. The downsides of these that I've had to deal with myself is, the first thing is about workaholic tendencies. So if you fill your day like that, where all of your time is filled, 7 days a week for 12 weeks at a time, then I found as I got older I just needed to be kept busy all the time, and so I would just work and I'd work and I'd work. And I often see this with my clients who come to me who have been boarding school, is this drivenness. They just keep going, they keep pushing, even if it's something they don't enjoy. And I think that's probably the second aspect of this day in the life of boarding school, is that for me there were things that I loved when I arrived at boarding school. So I loved skateboarding, or I loved Panini sticker books, or Star Wars figures, but they weren't accepted in that group. It was like seen as childish, and therefore I did what others expected of me. I was doing subjects that were expected. And as I write in my book here, I said, this was 2nd of February 1987, this is from my diary. My first lesson of the day was religious studies, one of my worst lessons of the week because it's so damn boring. Music came after that, which was just as boring. And then 2 weeks later, this morning we had full school chapel practice. It was boring as usual. So really for me, boarding school, certainly those first few years I just found them really boring. And therefore I wasn't doing things that I loved. And I think as I got older and left boarding school, I no longer knew what I loved to do. I no longer knew what I was passionate about. And it's taken a lot of therapeutic work and investigating, realizing that, I love gardening, for example. There was no space to garden at boarding school. Maybe that's different. Maybe there is the space to do those things that you love, but often there is the shame that, yeah, you might have a space to board, or, I did Cub Scouts before I went to boarding school. But when I got to boarding school, it was like, you didn't do Scouts. That was really uncool. And it was like, and the person who was running the Scouts was seen as a bit weird. There was 4 people who did Scouts, so it was like, no way, I ain't doing that. I'm going to get bullied. So I think this is another key thing, is that when we have this day in the life, we forget what we love. And so that's part of the investigation and the therapeutic work is, if you went to boarding school, it's to go back pre-boarding school. What did you love to do? And make the space to do those things. Maybe it's to garden, maybe it's to paint, maybe it's to do something creative. And that's really, really important. The next aspect of the day in the life is that as ex-boarders, when we leave boarding school, we become very controlling. It's like things have to be done a certain way. And this can especially be seen in relationships, is that we expect them to be a certain way. And we can be, right, why haven't you done this? Or this has to be done a certain way. And this for me comes from this day in the life of all our time's filled. We are regimented. We become really strict and structured because that's what's imposed on us. Again, it takes mindfulness to notice when you're feeling like you want to control someone, you want to control aspects of your life, to relax. And this is really important, is we've lost that connection to spontaneity, and therefore it's to give yourself that opportunity to be spontaneous. And I think young children are brilliant for that, because they love playing. It's like, right, okay, I really fancy, for me, some of my work post my breakdown and my breakthrough has been working with children. I'm a scout leader, I've done childcare, I've been a teacher, and that ability just to play. Right, what are we going to do? Play with cars or paper aeroplanes. And it's that spontaneity that we lose through that rigid routine, and that's something that you can explore. Just creating for the sake of creating. And another thing I would say, we lose a connection not only to spontaneity but also to feeling, because we're just so busy all the time. Rather than feeling, say, grief at missing home, or grief at problems with friends, we just work hard, we fill our time, and therefore we lose that connection with feeling. And oftentimes when we have less structured time, maybe we're on holiday or during lockdown, negative emotions can bubble up. It can be rather painful, and that's okay. We give ourselves that space to feel that. And I was listening to a talk by Francis Weller, I believe his name is, saying he met this African lady in a village, and she was just filled with joy, and it was like this beauty, and he just said to her, "You are so joyful." And she turned to him and she said, "That's because I cry a lot." I think this is really key, is that as we connect to our feeling, and post boarding school, I cried for probably 2 years every day, and what that enabled me to do was connect to my joy again. Connect to laughter. And I think when you start to challenge this structured nature of your day and just give yourself the space to feel, then grief can come up. See that as a positive thing. See that as a real blessing. I am now connecting in with the joy. Because when I soften to the grief, I soften my heart, and then I can feel other emotions as well. And if you look at the archetypal work, the king, the queen, if we go into grief, the other side of grief is joy. So the grief is often talked about in the lover, the other side of that is the king, the queen, joy, a blessing. So yeah, that's a day in the life of boarding school. So yeah, if you have any questions or you'd like me to explore anything else, this resonates with you or it doesn't, you know, this was obviously just my experience of what boarding school was like, and that a day in the life, and what that actually meant later on psychologically, and how some of the things of how I undid that. So I've got lots of other videos on YouTube. You can also visit my website at piers-cross.com, and I've got some articles there about boarding school. So thank you very much, many blessings to you, and yeah, take care and be well. Bye for now.